The illegal aerial fireworks that dominate Hawaii skies each New Year's Eve have become a constant. In some areas, the booms start around Halloween and last through Chinese New Year. Thousands of complaints are filed with police every year, but with demand so high, the supply endures. What, if anything, can lawmakers and police do to combat the growing illegal fireworks problem? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. The jarring booms can be heard on any given night in Hawaii. Illegal fireworks disturb the peace and have a particularly adverse effect on those suffering from post-traumatic stress disorders, medical conditions, and pets. Every year, fireworks cause property damage and injuries, and the problem seems to be escalating. This past New Year's Eve, paramedics responded to 11 fireworks-related injuries, almost double the amount from the previous year. This year, lawmakers have introduced several bills aiming to clamp down on these aerial explosives. Suggested solutions include steeper fines, random inspections of shipping containers, creating a fireworks task force, and using undercover police officers to try and catch offenders. Is this the year for a solution? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email us or call us with your questions. We also encourage you to get involved with the conversation on our Facebook page. Now to our guests. State Senator Karl Rhoads represents District 13, which covers downtown Honolulu, Chinatown, Pauoa, and Nuʻuanu. This year, he proposed a bill calling for random inspections of shipping containers to search for illegal fireworks. Larry Veray is the chairperson of the Pearl City Neighborhood Board. He is a retired U.S. Navy Master Chief Petty Officer and has served on the neighborhood board for the past 17 years, including the last 5 years as chair. Alicia Maluafiti is the founder and volunteer board president of Poi Dogs and Popoki. She has been involved in animal rescue for almost 30 years and has previously served as a director of community relations at the Hawaiian Humane Society. Major Gail Beckley has been an HPD officer for 30 years and is currently the commander of District 8, which runs from Ewa Beach to Kaena Point, covering the entire leeward coast. She has a master's degree and 2 bachelor's degrees from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Let me start with you, Major. Is it your guys' perception at the police department that it is indeed getting worse out there from year to year?
Yes, like this year, I think in my district, we had 4 injuries that night on New Year's Eve. And some of them were very severe, where they got seriously injured by aerials that went off in their hands, exploded in their face. So definitely.
And do we have ways of measuring what's going on, or is it just basically injuries at this point?
It's just our calls for the service and also the injuries. This year, even with the rain that we had, we still had a lot of calls. So.
Larry Veray, what's your perception in Pearl City? Also going up?
Well, I've been tracking this for many years because Mark Takai and I were the first to draft up the original resolution and the bills to go up for the fireworks laws. But I've been tracking this for years. And, with the 45,000 residents I have in Pearl City, I get a lot of complaints. And I feel it too. I feel the pain. Just only a few nights ago, I think I jumped 7 inches off the bed because it was so close and so loud at 2 o'clock in the morning. But it is getting worse. And it seems like, the days of the nice aerial fireworks, you see the different clusters. Well, now who's got the lowest level aerial bomb?
Mm-hmm.
Larry, you're as a former military member, do you see it as particularly harmful to people who might have military experience that has traumatized them in the past?
Absolutely. And even though I don't think I really have PTSD, but I'm a Vietnam vet. And I every time I hear those loud explosions, it brings back recall me running to the bunker when we had rockets coming in at Dene.
Alicia Maluafiti with Poi Dogs and Popoki, what's the particular impact it has on animals? Do animals ever get used to this?
No, and I hear this too, and I see it on social media. It's just some people whose dogs or cats for that matter that are not impacted by the bombs. Oh, my dogs are fine. You got to train them. Oh, just bring them inside. Oh, I mean, it's so simple for people. They lack sympathy for those of us whose dogs are extremely frightened from these fireworks. And my dogs, I had the most scared dog, 110-pound Mastiff, a rescue. And you got to be nervous about these dogs when they're scared and these bombs go off. You can't plan to secure these dogs. And when they get out, they can do a lot of damage. I just called HPD on Friday night, 4 houses down. I had 20 aerials and then the big bomb. So down here where I live, it's going off all the time, nonstop.
You know, it's interesting what you point out is that, but I think probably, and I don't mean to stereotype, but I'm guessing that a lot of people who are firing off these fireworks have animals, have pets.
Yeah, I think that if they're putting up the sort of entertainment is trumping safety, health, and just community peace. And it's just people who are getting their jollies. There's a huge party. So this was obviously part of their celebration. The next door neighbors all have dogs. And I know that they were pissed off too, but I don't know. I think that it goes over their head. They're really not concerned about the people around them or obviously the pets.
Senator Rhoads, I have to read you this question from Danielle. I think you should retitle the name of your show to "Who Wants to File a Class Action Lawsuit Against the State of Hawaii?" Otherwise, this episode should be a really short one if you're really asking what are lawmakers going to do to stem the flow of illegal fireworks in Hawaii. There is a really short and easy answer: nothing. So, I mean,
couldn't disagree more. I in my years in the legislature, I don't believe I've ever seen so many fireworks bills introduced. I think at the legislature, at least for myself and I think everybody really, we're seeing the same thing that the other panelists are seeing, which is an increase in both in aerials and explosions on the ground. And I think it's fair to say that in the last 6 months, I've gotten more fireworks complaints from constituents than any other kind of complaint, even during the COVID pandemic.
Can you tell me though what things have been tried before? I remember covering past efforts. What's been tried that hasn't worked so far that you're aware of?
Well, I mean, it's already a misdemeanor or a felony if the poundage is big enough, and that doesn't, a misdemeanor is up to a year in jail. A Class C felony is up to 5 years in jail. That doesn't seem to faze anybody. I think the reason it doesn't faze them is sort of the rule of thumb in criminal law is it's not the penalty that deters people; it's whether they think they're going to get caught. And at this point, when you see hundreds of these things going off and they've never been caught and they don't know anybody who's been caught, then they tend to discount the penalty. So that's been tried. There are some bills that would further increase the penalty. The other thing that just recently we passed a bill, I think it was in 2019, I think it was before the pandemic, that made it so that there was liability for a landowner that was letting people use their property to fire off aerials or just blow stuff up. That, I was hopeful at the time that would be a pretty good deterrent, but it really hasn't, as far as I can tell, it hasn't made much difference at all.
That would kind of require neighbor to go against neighbor. And I'm just wondering, Major, do you feel like part of the issue, I mean, you go out, you talk to people, you see people, who you believe may have fired it off. Are neighbors generally not willing or afraid to turn in their neighbors? Is that a big issue for enforcement?
That's a big issue. In fact, Alicia's case, I did look that up, and the neighbor was cited for that because the renter was cited for that. I don't know what the disposition of these tickets. I tried looking them up, but I didn't have any luck in it. But that seems to be the easier one to do, is if a neighbor it's coming from this particular address. The officers can go over there and cite, find out who the renter or the owners are and cite. And we have been doing that. But I just don't know what the disposition is, what's happening to these tickets. And I wish maybe we would have had the prosecutors or the judicial, some representative talk about the stats of that, because we're issuing tickets, but what's happening with that? We had 2 felony arrests this year. In fact, our district did one of the arrests for large poundage of fireworks, and it was a felony case, but I did check up on the status of that. And it hasn't been conferred yet with the prosecutors because they're so backlogged, and the conferral date for that is not until July. So I couldn't give you a disposition of arrest that was made in December on these 2 cases.
Well, that's
So,
a whole nother
Yeah.
issue of
But I wish
pandemic.
we would have had that portion, that representation here, because we're making arrests, we're handing out citations, but what's happening? You know?
That's worth looking into. Alicia, you want to say something?
Well, I wanted to comment on the 2019. So the comment by the viewer, the legislature and Senator Rhoads did pass that bill in 2019. And that was the first time where HPD came to the table before session, and HPD recommended this bill, which would hold either the tenant, the lessee, or the landlord liable, the property owner liable for anything coming up off of their property. It does require a neighbor to report them. And you can use video, you can use drone, you can use photos, or you can be an eyewitness. So I have reported that multiple times. I'd see at least 5 times asking HPD to cite. I said, I will testify. I saw it with my own eyes. I'll be a witness. And so I think that that entire bill, and Major probably knows this, was framed around the drinking, sort of the liquor law, that if you serve liquor at your home, you're responsible if someone leaves and is drunk and gets in an accident. You as the property owner or the lessee or tenant, you are liable. And that's HPD came up with the premise for that legislation, and it passed.
Major, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I did want to say, because I did look up the citations and I did notice that Alicia was complaining in several of them, but I actually, if you weren't called as a witness, so I don't know what the disposition of those cases were, what happened with those cases, but that is a problem. People don't want to get involved. The community don't want to get involved. I don't know if they think that this is a kind of a victimless crime, but I'm a dog lover. I'm a vet I'm a combat vet that went to Afghanistan. So I understand all what you're all talking about, the problems faced, but people just don't want to get involved. They don't want to be the witness. They don't want to have to squeal, be the witness against their neighbors or the people that they see in the community. So, but we do still have people that do come forward.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again, Major, for your service to this community. Karl Rhoads, what have you had the opportunity in your committee to ask what's actually happening with the outcomes of these bills that you've tried in the past? To ask the
well, I think the approach we've been taking is that it doesn't seem to be working, and so we need to think about other things. And that's so the things that are a couple of the ideas that are still in play is one, to actually have a lower grade penalty that you don't have to go through the rigmarole that you do when you charge somebody with a real crime. So it would be more like a traffic ticket. And then, yeah, it would still be helpful to have witnesses. I mean, no crimes are self-enforcing. The police always need witnesses. So sometimes the witness can be themselves if they see it themselves, but almost all crimes, there's somebody else involved that goes to court and testifies, right? So this idea that somehow it's going to be self-enforcing is just, I don't know what people are thinking about there, because that's not the way it works. But anyway, having a lower level crime, I think, will be useful, because then when an officer sees somebody do something, they can just write them a ticket on the spot like they do for a traffic ticket. And it's also easier to adjudicate, so you don't have the right to a jury trial and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so Larry, what have you seen in terms of people's willingness to enforce? You mentioned that your condo association has managed to keep it off of their property. Do you think that there's since there is this liability associated with having fireworks being fired on your property, that would affect a condo association, right? Is that the basis on which you're able to enforce that on your residents?
Yes, one of the things that we did here at Wild Garden Sky B in Pearl City is that we had our board of directors rewrite the bylaws so that we could mandate any type of fine when it's associated with the health and safety and welfare of our homeowners and residents. So with that in place, it gave us the hammer to be able to enforce on New Year's and 4th of July or anytime, no fireworks at all on this property whatsoever. And we've had good control. That's been in effect almost 10 years. And we've only had one case, and then the board dropped the fine on it because it wasn't a major issue. But I did want to mention is that the Pearl City Neighborhood Board, we passed a resolution on illegal aerial fireworks on the 25th of January this year. And what it is asking the Hawaii congressional legislative representatives to ask the federal government for the help. Because if you take a look at this, a lot of things go away if you can interdict those fireworks before they get to Hawaii. And the feds have the capability to do it.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions about that. I just wanted to ask Major Beckley, what do you think would work at the street level enforcement? I mean, Senator Rhoads mentioned just being able to write a citation. If the property owners can be held liable, can you write a ticket on the property owner? Even though everybody runs into the house, can you write a ticket on the property owner? Or, for example, I live in Makakilo, where there's a couple of community associations that have the kind of rules that Larry Veray is talking about. Could you literally go up to Palehua Gardens condo and say, there were fireworks being fired off on your property, here's the citation, and then hope that they then go after the resident? Has stuff like that been talked about, or is that possible?
Yeah, that not for the association, but just for the renter or the homeowner. But not for the example that you just gave. No, we wouldn't be able to do that right now with the current law.
So let's explore this. I really do have to, there's like so many questions about the docks, and I not even really, to try and read all of them would take me a long time. But I tell you, so Larry, David, Facebook, Coolio, why are the people at ports and people with legal permits for fireworks not being investigated? I believe there's a lot of corruption at the ports, and politicians are turning a blind eye to profiting from it. Another person says, I'm disgusted, this is Mary, I'm disgusted with the determined failure of local law enforcement to monitor the docks, the source of fireworks in Hawaii. 10 years ago, the starting pay of a dock worker was $200,000. I don't think that's quite accurate, but these prize jobs pass through families from father to son, dock workers facilitating the entry of fireworks. Major, where is the enforcement jurisdiction playing field when it comes to the docks?
Yeah, that we don't enforce the docks. That wouldn't be us. So we're just the local enforcement for the city county of Honolulu. That would be the jurisdiction of the harbors, or even the feds, like the borders, wherever customs. It wouldn't be the Honolulu Police Department.
Is that something that local law could change, Senator Rhoads? Is that something that you could legislate? I know you brought it up this year, and how would your proposal work?
Well, my proposal was to have sniffing dogs so that they could, they can be trained to smell pretty small amounts of fireworks. But then the idea was to pull the shipping container off the dock and into a place that you could actually open it. As a general rule, neither the stevedores nor the shipping companies open the containers. There's somebody who ordered whatever's in the product. They take it to them and they open it. So I don't know, use an example of Safeway, they get a whole a whole container load of stuff and they take it to their store and they open it. So stevedores and Matson or Pasha or whoever, they don't open them. So I'm not sure that's, part of it depends on where it's coming from. My understanding is that most of the fireworks that come to Hawaii go to the West Coast first and then come back. If it were coming directly from another country, then that would be a federal thing. That would be Customs and Border Patrol or whatever it's called now. I lost track of the names of the agencies. But the ones coming from the West Coast, that's all internal to the United States, and they don't get the same sort of inspection that you would get if you're coming from overseas. So something, that's why I proposed what I proposed, which was if we have a way to just check and see if there's fireworks in it, then we take them somewhere, open them up, and it could be they're legal fireworks, or it could be that there are legal fireworks mixed with illegal fireworks, or it could just be all illegal fireworks. But you got to have a way to trigger. You have to have a reason to open them.
So at the airport, right? Those dogs walk between people before they go into TSA. I mean, theoretically, when the container is being brought out of the yard, the dogs could be around the exit or something like that. That way, almost everybody would get a sniff. What do you guys, Alicia and Larry, what do you think of enforcement at the docks? What do you know, and what do you think would be something you could do there? Alicia, you first.
I mean, it's, I work with the State Department of Ag, and they are tasked with a lot of the inspections at the docks. And there's, talk about shorthanded with the police department. Department of Ag is incredibly short-staffed. And I mean, I think we all would love to see enforcement at the docks, since that's where it's coming in. I would love the idea of the dogs, by the way, using them for this kind of work. I think there was a bill, but I think it died. I think there's a feeling that some of the illegals are coming in on the big containers by the pyrotechnic guys. So they get it here, and then they're doling out the illegals to, their major dealers. And maybe there needs to be some fines or additional permit fees for these sort of big time guys that are bringing this stuff in, and hold them more accountable. I'm not saying that they're the only ones, but it's easy for them to bring this stuff in. And I would be interested in knowing who's checking out their supplies that are being ordered in.
Larry?
Yeah, I personally believe that it's overwhelming to try to do inspections here. As Senator Rhoads has said previously, there's thousands of containers coming in. They can't inspect them all. But I think the most efficient way to do this is, like they always say, follow the money. Well, follow the fireworks. When they're manufactured up in the Shanghai River, they come down on barge. They're loaded on the merchant ships. They're all declared explosives. They go to Los Angeles. From there, they're trucked into the mainland to a location. And then those fireworks are repacked. They're put in containers. And I call them Trojan horse containers, because probably 3/4 of it's all illegal fireworks and other contraband. And the front of the container, if it is inspected, is probably high priority goods. And of course, if you think about it, you notice that on New Year's, all the people that bought legal permits and everything, all those permits couldn't be filled because the legal fireworks were late. But all the illegal fireworks, none of them were late. I was so surprised that, and of course, we're waiting for food to come in, but the fireworks are here. But I really think it's more efficient for the feds to take this thing on, because they have the capability to narrow the shipments, the containers, and interdict before it gets to Hawaii. And if you do that, look at all the things that we're trying to do, they all go away. No fireworks coming in. But the feds have the technology to be able to really nip this in the bud. And also, because of the organized crime and corruption, I think the FBI's got a little bit of this too.
Major Beckley, let me go back to the dogs again. I'm sure that in your time at HPD, you dealt with specially trained canines. Do you think that could work? At least some kind of random check, or do you think that, as Larry's described, everything's commingled together anyway? So the effort it would take to catch a significant amount of it might be too high. What do you think about that use of the canines?
Yeah, I agree with Larry. It's just too many of the containers, and we have some canine dogs that we do use, but that's more like going after the criminals. Like, for example, we're looking for somebody that maybe ran from a scene, we're going to use our canine dogs. But we don't have those kind of dogs that can detect the specific fireworks, and then we're going to be going after them. We don't do that.
Major, I have another question it's pretty much on point for the police department. This is from Richard. Clearly, hundreds, if not thousands, of Hawaii residents know how to obtain illegal fireworks. If the average citizen knows where to get illegal fireworks, why can't the police determine who is dealing these materials and confiscate them? I'm not going to say the last part. I mean, he's sort of suggesting that maybe some police officers enjoy fireworks themselves and maybe have access. That's his suggestion. I'm not suggesting that. But what about this idea of undercovers going out and identifying the sources of the fireworks, and like you do with drug dealers?
Yeah, we did have a couple of busts, like I said, but I wish I could give you an outcome of it. Like, we had a couple of buy busts, I guess you want to call them, that we did successfully make a couple of arrests this year. But I wish I could give you the outcome of those cases. I'm kind of curious to see the outcome of them. I don't think I've been in the criminal investigative division for over 10 years, and I don't think we have ever had a successful prosecution for felony firework busts. I tried to do some research on that, and I couldn't find anything. So I wish that we would have had that representation to see if there's any successful prosecution. Go ahead.
Larry, you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to mention, as far as, using HPD for the undercover, but in our resolution, we had one of the three ways we wanted to go after this. Again, go after the warehousing. But what really concerns me is in Pearl City, we don't know where these fireworks are being stored. And we have an idea that there's residential homes, garages, and you've seen examples on TV, with neighborhoods blowing up. We haven't had that yet, but I can tell you it's probably coming because as many fireworks that are out there, we're going to have loss of life. And I hate to see our, people lose their life and property.
Alicia?
I mean, I think that has to be the core of why I'm not really nervous about reporting my neighbors. I know who they are. They're the same ones that are buying the firecracker permits every single year. It's the same homes, same parties, same illegals. And these things, we had all this wind, and on Friday night, these things are flying over my property. This makes me nervous, not just my animals, but now the safety and health of my property. I think that has to be the motivation for why people need to step up and come together and report the people who are setting this stuff off right at their property. It is where it's happening. And I will suggest there are a lot of people don't want to report their neighbors. They need an anonymous way to report them. And that way they're comfortable doing it. I obviously am just so sick of it that I'm not scared to report my neighbors anymore.
Major, go ahead.
Well, this just becomes problematic because you understand like the legal system, how it works. We actually have to make some kind of positive ID in order to make some kind of, to cite or make an arrest. So that becomes problematic when we're just relying on some kind of anonymous way of reporting. And we still have to follow the rules of evidence and what the prosecutor needs and what the courts need. So I understand it, especially we actually need to get the community more involved, and we do encourage that. But then it becomes a little bit problematic when you're doing it anonymously, or even these videos that are anonymous or photos that are anonymous, because there's a certain way we have to process the evidence and submit it to court. And I know a lot of people probably don't understand that, but it's just, there's a process that we have to go through, our judicial system.
Well, I wanted to, Senator Rhoads, I think that's one of the things that gets confusing to people, right? You're actually suggesting that they make it a lower level citation so that you don't have to have quite that level of proof. Maybe even decriminalize it like you do with traffic tickets. But then somebody goes, wait a minute, he's trying to reduce the penalties on illegal fireworks. It's something that the public struggles to understand.
Well, you still have to have some proof, but as you mentioned, it's not as high. So the fireworks violations are crimes. It's, the first level is a misdemeanor, which is up to a year in jail. Usually you don't get jail time if it's your first offense, and a Class C felony is up to 5 years in jail. So the key is getting caught. And when you have a lower level offense, like a fine, like a traffic ticket, then all you really need is a police officer to see it happen. And then they can be the witness, and then the neighbors or whoever don't have to be involved. But it's a lot harder for the police to do that if it's a felony or a misdemeanor. And of course, both felonies and misdemeanors do have a jury trial right. So that's why, yes, it is counterintuitive. But if we can better enforce a ticket as opposed to going after people with felonies, I think the situation will improve faster.
I'd like to circle back, though, to Major Beckley again. What's it like for an officer on New Year's Eve? I mean, what do they go through? Just to
give you some stats, for just that one 24-hour period from the December 21st, December 31st till January, that 24-hour period, we had over 5,000 calls for service. And we normally get about half of that in a normal day. So it's doubled on that day. And being in patrol for over 10 years in the Waianae area, it's like the worst night of patrol. You're just going from case to case to case. And then you want to take care of all these complaints, especially on New Year's Eve, but you're going to traffic, motor vehicle accidents. You're going to a lot of domestic violence cases, or you're going to argument calls, large parties fighting. So it's the worst night of the year. as I can recall.
And this year was on top of COVID restriction calls as well for the big parties, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm sorry, Senator Rhoads, were you trying to get my attention?
Yeah, well, so I mean, that's the thing. The other thing that you also have to look at is how many, obviously fireworks in Hawaii are very popular. It's hard to tell by looking out my window on New Year's Eve what the percentage of properties where they're coming up. But, I would guess that it's at least 15%. And whenever you have 15% of 1.4 million people wanting to do something that the rest of us don't want them to do, it's really hard to stop. So, I think we just need to keep in mind that the popularity of fireworks in Hawaii works against what we're trying to do, because you just get that many people who are flouting the rules, and it makes it a very difficult situation.
Larry, you were trying to get my attention earlier.
Yeah, what I really like to see is to build a model, the whole process of this for the community, the residents to stand up. It's hard for neighbor to go against neighbor, but when you have three neighbors going after a neighbor, it's real serious. And I look at it, I can put up what Alicia said, I'll put up with 4th of July, I'll put up with New Year's, but it's the urban terrorism that I want to go after, and residents want to stop. It's the bad actors. And I think that you will see, if we can get this model to be built with the process, where it starts with the residents, they see what's going on. Alicia just told you. She has the video evidence. She has the audio evidence. She has 3 of her neighbors with her. They signed the affidavits. And once they got that proof, they called the HPD. HPD shows up. They fill out the report, file the report, and now the evidence is there. It's gone. Now it's got to end up at the prosecutor's office. That's where the problem is, because in the past, and Major, please correct me, the police officers had to see somebody lighting the fuse. That was the issue.
Mhm.
But I really think that like Senator Rhoads said, that one bill that I just provided testimony to, if we could expedite this process like a traffic ticket, it makes it easier. But also, I've been telling the residents, don't discount doing a civil lawsuit. That the door is open for that. You could do that anytime. And the thing is, though, if you go that route, there's an opportunity, judge, to provide punitive damages. My vision is that when you have that bad actor, and it has definitely impacted because somebody had a heart attack, they lost one of their loved ones, they lost their pet, the pet ran out, got run. They knew exactly who did it. The judge could provide punitive damages. And can you imagine if we had $1,000 per head? You got the 3 families, one family's got 4 people in it, and they got 3 dogs. Well, that's $8,000 right there, $1,000 a head. You think that's going to stop people from doing stuff? It will.
Okay, Alicia, you've been wanting to talk for a while.
Well, this goes to Senator Rhoads' suggestion about the adjudication of these tickets. And this is actually a false statement too, because even this year, HPD shows up for the call and they tell the person that saw the fireworks, did you see who lit the fuse? We never see who lights the fuse. It's never going to happen. None of us are that close to see who lights the fuse. And so McCarthy is the one that came up. He was assistant chief at the time. They came up with the idea of, we know what property it's coming from. We know the family that lives there that's lighting this stuff up starting in September. There has to be, and by the way, I apologize, Major, but the police that's showing up telling me I have to see them light the fuse, I'm like, you're wrong. You're giving out wrong information. And one of the officers just told me Friday night, if you report this, you're going to have to go to court and testify. Yeah, I know. Good. I mean, he didn't want me to report it. So I feel like there has to be, the solution is in that way McCarthy carved out that bill from 2019, but it goes back to what Larry said. Who is going to report it? Are we strong enough as a community? Are we so sick and tired of the bombs around us, and it never stops? I'm tired of it. I'm reporting it.
Major, there's a lot said about you guys' enforcement effort there. Is that accurate now? I know we talked about this light the fuse. Is that really the level of proof that you would need? It sounds like what you're saying, though, is when you've done prosecutions, you're not seeing the results. And why is it important for HPD to see whether people actually get convicted of these things?
Well, what Alicia was saying, we did respond to on Friday, because I did look up the calls, and try to do a little bit of background research on it. And the citations was issued to the renter of those residents a few times, I think on 4 different occasions. But the officers are just going down, taking the information. Did you see what happened? And they're not trying to discourage you in any way. It's just the way that they're interviewing. Did you see who might have lighted? Then they can give the citation to that particular person, the guy right there with the red shirt. That's why they're asking you that. And then I think that with this one case that happened on Friday, because I did talk to the officer who responded, I think you were a little bit concerned, Alicia, with where they parked at. So they're saying like, oh, we're here to, because you called it in, but they wanted to know that, hey, just, you're going to be the witness in this case. You're going to eventually have to testify if it does go to court. So I think that's why they just wanted to reiterate, you're going to be a witness in this. So
yeah, I think that, thank you, Major. I think that one of the things that happens is that when people are actually pushed to the point where they actually have to do something, it is hard. It's like, it's easy to make a phone call. And I know Alicia and Larry would be willing to do whatever they want. But when you maximize this out around the community, is that really where we can find a solution? I want to get back to a couple of quick questions. This is the only question I've heard from someone, and I think the name is Alicia, who says, you took away too much from us. All we're going to have is pops. Then people are going to make their own fireworks, and that's when people are going to get hurt. I mean, do you think that even if you successfully managed to get this out of the hands of most people, that we would be done with fireworks? Senator Rhoads, what do you think?
Well, it could certainly be better than it is. It will take a multi-pronged strategy, including interdiction on the mainland, including sniffing dogs here, being able to open up cargo. It will include better enforcement. It will probably include changes to the way the kind of penalties that are associated with fireworks violations. But I think in the end, it's going to be hard to get rid of it entirely. If 15, 20%, I don't know what the percentage is, say 15% of the population really likes their fireworks, some of it's going to get through. And I don't think we'll ever get rid of it all. But can we not ratchet it back from what we've had to put up with the last couple of years? Yes, absolutely. I believe we can.
Okay, so here's an interesting question. This is from the same person that just asked the person about, this is an advocate for fireworks. I'm glad to hear from her because, so far she's a little lonely when it comes to the Insights audience. Give us an open location where we can pop them. That and maybe more public fireworks displays because we haven't had those. Legally, Senator, is that even tenable? That is, because what property owner is going to let you do that, right? I mean, it's kind of a. Do you see that? Or,
well, I mean, I don't think it's a crazy idea. I mean, you have shooting ranges where you have to put them far enough away from people's houses so that nobody gets shot. And it's a dangerous activity. It makes a lot of noise. And so we put them, in places that you can support them. So I don't think there's any bill right now that has that particular idea in it. But my impression is the people who are in my neighborhood in Chinatown and Palama, they're not too concerned about whether they're breaking the law or not. And I'd be pretty surprised if they would take their fireworks to a safe pop zone. I suppose some of them would, but my guess is that the people who would take them to the safe pop zone are the same people who will pay to buy legal fireworks now.
I saw Alicia vigorously shaking her head.
I mean, these bombs are going off at parties at the homes. I mean, when I drove by, there's 25 people in the middle of the street. Everybody's drunk. They're blowing these things up right out of their driveway. When they got done, they took all the paraphernalia and threw it over the fence into this, wilderness area. People are doing it there at home for a reason, for a party. I heard they were doing them at the football games and the police were there and everybody loves it. I'm just sitting there thinking, you guys, it's illegal. But I don't think anybody's going to go anywhere unless their party is there. Then they'll let them off.
Let me go back to this idea because we did get a question from someone. Why can't we why won't police enforce even when they have been shown the house responsible? And I don't know if we got a clear answer. What is the capability of either prosecuting or a landowner for fireworks on their property? Senator, first of all, I mean, where are we now with that, and how would that work technically?
Well, I don't have the bill in front of me, but my recollection is that if you can identify that fireworks are being shot off from a specific location, the owner of that property or the person who controls it, so if it's a lessee, can be held criminally responsible for allowing that to happen. The penalties are a little bit different, but it's essentially the same. That's what the lawyers, I guess, would call a predicate. You know, you gotta see, somebody's gotta be willing to testify that they saw the fireworks coming up from that particular property, and then that's how you make your case from there. So
are you saying that when you say criminally responsible, does that mean
it's a crime?
Yeah, and Senator,
Yeah.
Major, these cases that you've talked about where you have gone to homes, those were seizure cases, right? Where you went in and actually got caches of fireworks. Has the police department gotten to the point where that 2019 law has gotten to the point where you can go up to a house where there's a bunch of burned out fireworks on a driveway and say, okay, 9210, whatever, this street, here's a citation, or where's the owner, come out here, or can you go into a house and look for more fireworks?
Without a search warrant, we can't do that. But like if it's confronting their property, how do we know who, if it was a homeowner or the renter that did that? Maybe it was a car that was passing by and threw it out of the car and it landed in front of their house or in their yard. You still need to make that positive identification of where did this come from? And it even goes for the video and the photographs that people might be turning in. What if this was a photograph that was taken 5 years ago and you're like, hey, you know what, this photograph came from that house, and they're just making it up. We gotta have that chain of custody on who took this photo. You gotta give a statement, and this photo is gonna be put into evidence. There's certain chain of custody for these type of evidence that we're going to be submitting into with the citation or the arrest.
I understand. Senator, I want to ask you, because you're the guy who can write these laws or propose these laws. How did you picture that working?
Well, I'm trying to pull up the bill right now so that we can look at it more specifically. So the title is called Liability of Homeowner, Renter, or Person Otherwise Responsible for Real Property. A homeowner, renter, or person otherwise responsible for real property who intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly allows an individual while on the property to possess, set off, ignite, or otherwise cause to explode any aerial device shall be deemed to be in violation of this chapter and be subject to the penalties specified in these sections. So I think from a lawyer's perspective, what the police and the prosecutors need is somebody who saw, and it can be them. They need somebody who saw the fireworks going up from that specific property. And then, yes, there's a chain of, there's things that have to go into evidence. The people have to come and testify probably that they saw the fireworks going off from that property. But that's the end of the story in terms of their liability. If the owners of that property let it happen, then they're on the hook for a crime.
But if they didn't know it was happening, then they're not going to be on the hook, right? I mean, how do they?
Well, the standard is whatever I just read.
Okay, so that's good.
Intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly. So it would, yeah. I mean, I don't know, if you didn't know you owned the piece of property, you inherited it, you didn't know that you owned it, then yeah, maybe.
I'm thinking more about. I don't want. We're going to kind of get into weeds here, but I mean, I'm just thinking.
Oh, we're in the weeds. We're in the weeds.
We're in the weeds. Is it if I'm the owner of a rental property, and I can only, I guess it also says the renter can be held responsible, but the knowing recklessly and all that stuff, that's where the police have to figure it out, right? Let me ask Major really quickly though, what Larry was saying about the storage of fireworks in private homes. Do you think that that's really prevalent? That there's a lot of people out there with a lot of fireworks on their properties? And what would you, from a enforcement point of view, suggest as a creative way of dealing with those, the stored fireworks out there? Maybe not try and do undercover, but like, is there a way to figure out where those are? Again, dogs, infrared. What do you think? I'm just curious.
Well, we only have we don't have a lot of dogs with our SSD, but no, I don't know of any technology that we could pick up those kind of large fireworks. It's almost like, I think I use the analogy of like, we try to go after the main drug dealers. It's hard to go after all the users because there's so many users. We try to go after the drug dealers because that's what we want to do. But then we have to do these drug buys. And then we did have a few successful drug buys or fireworks buys this year. And we were able to make some felony arrests. So. And
you're waiting to see what the outcomes are there. Alicia, I haven't let you talk for a bit, but let me throw off something. And I'm not going to ask you, Major, to respond to this because it's not really fair, but off-duty, this is from John on Maui, off-duty police are the ones blowing off most on Maui. Ask the Major about that. Okay, I guess I have to ask the Major.
I live on Maui, so.
I know, but then here's one from Kohala on the Big Island. Our Big Island neighborhood was nuts, especially at the policeman's house. There's no way we were calling the police. Do you run into that sometimes, Major, that people think that the police aren't going to help them because the police are somehow involved?
I personally have not run into that, but like I said, I hate fireworks too. I have animals, and I wish we could just prohibit all fireworks except for religious or certain purposes that we're going to be using it. But I'm just kind of curious too. I don't know if the senator might know this, but what happened to those two resolutions that would prohibit fireworks, period?
Good job. I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know if they're alive or not, but yes, it certainly has been proposed multiple times over the years. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the same enforcement problem is that all these aerials that are going up are illegal already.
That's
so
true.
I'm not sure it makes any difference. I mean, lots of illegal fireworks are getting in. If we ban them all, my guess is lots of illegal fireworks would still get in unless we change our policies.
Alicia, what are your thoughts about total ban?
Well, I do agree. I don't know if it's going to do any good, but I do get sick and tired of the, pro illegal fireworks people saying, this only happened because you banned this or, fire, all these other stuff we banned. And that's why it's so bad today. I don't know where they make all fireworks legal and it'll go away. I'm like, no, it's never going to go away. You make it all legal, it's going to get worse. But I wanted to just mention, when somebody blows up illegal aerials, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, I guarantee you they're going to put more up. That's why it's so easy to find them. So if I hear the first couple go up, I go outside, I look, 10, 15 minutes later, there they go again. Now I know who they are. I'm 5 houses down. I go walk up. There they are, right in their driveway, lighting this stuff up, going right up off their property. So, I mean, it is pretty easy to catch them. You don't need to see who lit the fuse, but that I totally get going after the users. But when they're 4 or 5 houses down from you and they do it over and over, year after year, that it just gets to be so much. We're tired of it. Okay, I just think if people had more neighbors like mine, they'd probably be calling in more often.
Apparently, a lot of people do have neighbors like yours. Okay, a question. What would it take to get the federal government involved? This is a question for Senator Rhoads from Danielle in Honolulu. Is this something that should be addressed at the federal level with a federal law? And I'd like to follow up with Major Beckley after you speak about, is this happening everywhere else? Or is Hawaii completely, other places, or are we completely unique in this? But go ahead, Senator, what would it take? Should we be trying to get the feds involved in this?
Well, I think the feds are not going to get involved with street level enforcement. They're
Right.
just not.
We're talking about
Where
the docks, I think.
where they could be helpful though is because I don't, most of these fireworks, my understanding is, are not made in the United States. They're like everything these days, everything's made in China. And so there is certainly room for improvement on letting in fireworks across the border to start with, and trying to track better where they're going. Now that's complicated somewhat by the fact that other states don't have as laws the same as us. I remember as a child, I grew up in Indiana, and when you drove south, when you got to like Kentucky or Tennessee, as soon as you crossed the border, there were places where you could buy all kinds of different fireworks that were not available in Indiana. So it does make it a little more difficult for the feds to say, okay, this kind of fireworks legal in Tennessee, so they say they're sending it to Tennessee. This one's not legal in Hawaii, so we'll keep it from going to Hawaii. But they certainly, on the interdiction side, I think they have a role to play.
Major, my question was, I forgot my question. I got so many questions here, it's crazy. But I mean, do you think having federal involvement at the docks would help us?
Yes, I think so.
And then, okay, drones. Raymond says, why don't you use drones? Major, have you guys thought about that?
I think it's illegal, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Senator. I think it's illegal to use drones, but we don't. We have a few drones that we do use, but we don't. We don't have that kind of capability that we're going to be flying them all over the city here.
So I got a question from Kalawini.
Mr. Veray had a point.
Oh, go ahead. Oh,
Yeah, Daryl, if I could circle back to the question for bringing the federal government in, I just want to mention that the Pearl City Neighborhood Board resolution was passed to Congressman Case, and what he did was he took the resolution and he sent it to the Department of Transportation, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Explosives, asking for their assistance, and he wants to meet with them to find out what they could do. So what I'm very happy for, that resolution not only has attention to the state legislature, but also at the congressional level, where the requirement is stated above. And with Congressman Case, if he could convince them to get involved and the scope of the situation, because it's not just Hawaii. I've talked to friends in other states that this organized ring is actually feeding big cities. So I really think there's some hope here of at least trying to mitigate. I use that term. We'll never get rid of all of it. But the thing is, I want to go after the bad actors. I want to go after the guys that blow off those fireworks at 2 o'clock in the morning, or what church service is going on.
Major, I now remember my question. My question was what you're aware of in terms of other, huge illegal fireworks issues in other places in the country that would make this worthy of federal interest across the country.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to comment on that. I'm not sure about how it's affecting other states.
Okay. This is an interesting pair of questions. Kalawini says, a home burned down in our community from the illegal fireworks, but sadly, it continues even now just this week. And another, Bob from Waimea Big Island, if they're exploding illegals out of property, notify the lender and fire insurance company, and that will take care of it real quick. Do you think that the civil route, Senator, you're also an attorney, do you think civil action like that would have any impact if homeowners really worried about the potential for damaging other people's property?
I mean, I think it's theoretically possible, some kind of a nuisance theory, noise, smoke, water flowing off one person's property onto another has been a tort for a long time, but you got to go to court to do it. It's not self-enforcing in terms of just the amount of money you would spend trying to enforce it. You're way better off going to the police and saying, I saw these guys do it at a specific point and I'm willing to go to court to testify and go to the hassle of going to court. It's way, way cheaper.
I actually think we should end with, let me read some comments. I got so many comments, probably more than I've gotten for any show. Problem is these people who blast these fireworks off at all times of year. They have no class, no respect, and why government feels the need to create laws. People just need to be more respectful of one another. I never grew up with these kind of bombs going off all year round, only the regular fireworks we all celebrated. It's very different now. My parents would have given us lickings for doing this kind of stuff. I think that's sort of a call for personal responsibility and neighborliness and caring for one another. And I think we're going to end the show on that thought. And I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and thank you to our guests, State Senator Karl Rhoads and Pearl City Neighborhood Board Chair Larry Veray, Alicia Maluafiti from Poi Dogs and Popoki, and Major Gail Beckley from HPD. Next week on Insights, historically, the Native Hawaiian community has been the hardest hit and most priced out of housing here in Hawaii. More than 28,000 are on the wait list for leases from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. This year, lawmakers have promised $600 million to Hawaiian homelands and the people on the wait list. Will it be enough to make a dent in the unmet housing needs of Hawaiians? And is it too much for the Homelands Department to handle all at once? Please join us then. I'm Daryl Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.